Steps of Hindu Philosophic Thought, Part 2. This body is made of particles which we call matter, and it is dull and insentient. So is what the Vedantists call the fine body. The fine body, according to them, is a material but transparent body made of very fine particles, so fine that no microscope can see them. What is the use of that? It is the receptacle of the fine forces. Just as this gross body is the receptacle of the gross forces, so the fine body is the receptacle of the fine forces which we call thought in its various modifications. First is the body, which is the gross matter with gross force. Force cannot exist without matter. It must require some matter to exist, so the grosser forces work in the body, and those very forces become finer. The very force which is working in a gross form works in a fine form and becomes thought. There is no distinction between them, simply one is gross and the other the fine manifestation of the same thing. Neither is there any distinction between this fine body and the gross body. The fine body is also material, only very fine matter, and just as this gross body is the instrument that works the gross forces, so the fine body is the instrument that works the fine forces. From where do all these forces come? According to Vedanta philosophy, there are two things in nature, one of which they call Akasha, which is the substance infinitely fine, and the other they call Prana, which is the force. Whatever you see or feel or hear as air, earth, or anything is material, the product of Akasha. It goes on and becomes finer and finer or grosser and grosser, changing under the action of prana. Like Akasha, prana is omnipresent and interpenetrating everything. Akasha is like the water, and everything else in the universe is like blocks of ice made out of that water and floating in the water, and prana is the power that changes this Akasha into all these various forms. The gross body is the instrument made out of Akasha for the manifestation of prana in gross forms as muscular motion or walking, sitting, talking, and so forth. That fine body is also made of Akasha, a very fine form of Akasha for the manifestation of the same prana in the finer form of thought. So, first there is this gross body, beyond that is this fine body, and beyond that is the jiva, the real man. Just as the nails can be pared off many times and yet are still part of our bodies, not different, so is our gross body related to the fine. It is not that a man has a fine and also a gross body. It is the one body only. The part which endures longer is the fine body, and that which dissolves sooner is the gross. Just as I can cut this nail any number of times, so million of times I can shed this gross body, but the fine body will remain. According to the dualists, this jiva or the real man is very finite, minute. So far, we see that man is a being who has first a gross body which dissolves very quickly, then a fine body which remains through eons, and then a jiva. This jiva, according to the Vedanta philosophy, is eternal, but changefully eternal. The material of nature, prana and akasha, is eternal, but it is changing into different forms eternally. But the jiva is not manufactured either of akasha or prana. It is immaterial and therefore will remain forever. It is not the result of any combination of prana and akasha, and whatever is not the result of combination will never be destroyed because destruction is going back to causes. The gross body is a compound of akasha and prana and therefore will be decomposed. The fine body will also be decomposed after a long time, but the jiva is simple and will never be destroyed. It was never born for the same reason. Nothing simple can be born. The same argument applies. That which is a compound only can be born. The whole of nature, comprising millions and millions of souls, is under the will of God. God is all pervading, omniscient, formless, and He is working through nature day and night. The whole of it is under control. He is the eternal ruler. So say the dualists. Then the question comes, if God is the ruler of this universe, why did He create such a wicked universe? Why must we suffer so much? They say it is not God's fault. It is our fault that we suffer. Whatever we sow, we reap. We did not do anything to punish us. He did not do anything to punish us. Man is born poor or blind or some other way. What is the reason? He had done something before he was born that way. The jiva has been existing for all time, was never created. It has been doing all sorts of things all the time. Whatever we do reacts upon us. If we do good, we shall have happiness, if evil, unhappiness. So the jiva goes on enjoying and suffering and doing all sorts of things. What comes after death? All these Vedanta philosophers admit that this jiva is by its own nature pure, but ignorance covers its real nature, they say. As by evil deeds it has covered itself with ignorance, so by good deeds it becomes conscious of its own nature again. Just as is eternal, so its nature is pure. The nature of every being is pure.